Hello, welcome to this morning's edition of Off the Press. This is where we discuss all of the newspaper headlines as they break all of the headlines so far across the country. Many thanks for joining us on today's edition. It's Rise and Shine Nigeria, and joining me to discuss all of the newspaper headlines with me, I have Charles ODIZURU-ABANGWU, a public affairs analyst. Good morning, Charles. How has been the morning so far? It's quite wet.
Oh, well, it's wet, but thank goodness we're here.
And I think one of the issues that we keep on raising within this wet season again is that we have to address the drainage system. You would agree with me that the island isn't faring too fine.
It isn't faring too fine, much more even the mainland, I understand. I hear there are flooding everywhere. So it's no longer an island affair. It's
well, it's a Nigerian affair, and
perhaps
we just
so.
have to work on our drainage system. But let's get to the business of the day. Now, we start off with this day newspaper. The biggest headline, President Muhammadu Buhari demonstrates wisdom, suspends Ruka Settlement. And we have multiple riders. National Executive Council, it's inconsistent with National Livestock Plan. Autumn, others hail abatement. And going down to the lower part of the newspaper, Senator risks imprisonment, suspension from Senate over assault on woman, apologizes to Nigerians. And we also have a pictorial here. The royal visit, President Muhammadu Buhari and the Oba of Benin, Omanoba Uku Akpolokpolo Ewari II, during a courtesy visit by a delegation of Edo State traditional rulers to the presidential villa Abuja just yesterday. And court restrains APC pleas from disrupting Edo Assembly. And the Manufacturing Association of Nigeria, LCCI, backed federal government's decision to sign the AFCFTA. And Disco's TCN, responsible for national grid collapses. That's talking about business there in page 9. So Atiku also begins a petition against Buhari today, page 6. But Charles, now let's start off with the Ruka settlement policy. Now it is some way, somehow reached the president's notice that, well, all of the strong criticisms are not going down well with people and a suspension has come. And do you think it is the will of the people going forward?
In some way, I would say yes, the will of the people would have played a role in their decision. And I love what the way this day captured it. Buhari demonstrates wisdom, suspends Ruka settlement policy. And then from snippets I've picked from the news, the Vice President and the National Economic Councils had another name for the project. So how come we have a government whereby the National Economic Council, with representatives of the governors from each of the geopolitical regions, we're talking of something else and we're talking Ruka? And the two of them had a completely different approach to it. So there is something that we still don't know. How did Ruka come about?
And talking about how did Ruka come about, do you expect to see some re-strategizing in terms of how this initiative will play out? Because it has been clearly stated that it is inconsistent with the National Livestock Plan. So how then do we now define the scope of this Ruka settlement? How then do we have it convincing enough? Because so many state governors, especially within the Southeast, have said they are not going to allow this to take place.
Well, I think justice needs to be served, first and foremost. In the past 4 years, we've had a whole lot of farmer-herder clashes. It's always been there. But in the past 4 years, it seems to have suddenly gone out of proportions. Now, how come we're trying to settle businessmen? I see the herders as businessmen, and they have a right as Nigerians, if they are all Nigerians, to legitimately carry out their businesses. But there needs to be coherent policies backing it up.
And some would also say they're even taking a cue at what's happening in Ghana as well, having to deal with the herders farmers crisis. They had to be clear on their stance that they do not want any livestock being brought by the herders, and they have to evacuate all of those animals. If you don't evacuate, those animals are slaughtered or shot dead. Do you think such an approach is too harsh?
Such an approach is not too harsh, because I don't believe herdsmen moving about with cattle from one part of the country to the other on foot
who have been known to maim, rape, kill.
Good, and I don't think it necessarily makes the cattle particularly healthy. So I think a more coherent policy, perhaps ranching. should be adopted.
Okay. And now, since Tuesday afternoon, Senator Elisha Abbo has been on the news, and reports have it that the senator risks imprisonment and suspension from the Senate over the assault on the lady, and he's apologized to Nigerians. Some have said an apology should not be read in the first place.
For him to have apologized, we should definitely accept that. But the law needs to take its course. It's only natural. But then if the law has to take its course, this came up as a result of an expose courtesy of CCTV. We've had quite a lot of other expose on CCTV, and how come nothing has been done about it?
And also talking about today, to article also beginning a petition against President Muhammadu Buhari. It's been legal fireworks to prove the petition against the re-election of President Muhammadu Buhari. They've still maintained their stance. And what do you make of this? Well,
the last time this issue made news, it was about the no-server controversy. All I could say concerning the PDP petition, vis-a-vis Atiku's petition, we popularly would call it, is simply to wish him well. We are watching to see how justice plays out.
Okay, now before we move away from this day newspaper, I'd just like to have your thought. Now, the AFC-FTA has also been, that trade agreement has been one that has stalled for quite a while. So many did not understand the president's stance and why he was delaying, but now the federal government has decided to sign. They've announced their preparedness to take it up.
Okay, to sign
and
it.
The Manufacturing Association of Nigeria, the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry has also said, well, that's a good step in the right direction. Now you're thinking economy.
Well, I would say to a very large extent it's commendable, the president's stance on not signing the free trade agreement. I want to believe that the aim was for him to make sure loopholes to avoid dumping were being worked on. That's my thinking. If that was the rationale behind withholding signing the agreement, then it makes sense. And I want to believe now they are ready to go on that every other loophole should have been taken care of.
Okay.
Otherwise, it will become a dumping ground.
Exactly. Now, moving on to the Punch newspaper, reaction to as President Muhammadu Buhari bows to pressure, suspends Ruga. Do some herdsmen Ohaneze tells the federal government in suspension meant to buy time. Afenifere and Pandef also say that there, and we see the pictorials there as well. Reps in rowdy session, PDP caucus splits, Chinda Elumelu emerges factional leaders. Page 19 has details. And United Nations wants killing of Nigerians, others in Libya probed. Page 9 has details as well. Lagos community cries out as flood chases out residents. We have details in page 4 and 5 of the Punch newspaper. And federal government releases admission list of 104 Unity schools. And tribunal ends pre-hearing session. Atiku starts calling witnesses today. And military parades 51-year-old, 14 others over alleged killing of Alex Bade. Page 4 and 5 have details there. A National Assembly flees senator for slapping nursing mother. IG orders probe. And moving on to the top of the newspaper, steel manufacturers threaten to lay off 20,000 workers. Page 31 has details there. And Obasanjo promised Afenifere AD governors restructuring in second term. That's according to Oshoba. And my government performance in power supply, not good enough, President Buhari says. Let's talk about the rowdy session now with the PDP caucus split. Chinda Elumelu emerge as factional leaders. Were you expecting this rowdy session, and is this the kind of mannerism you expect from our democracy?
In all honesty, I would say no. But what I think is playing out is the speaker trying to pay back PDP in their own coin. But the issue of PDP sending their lists, I think it was within their rights to dictate who was going to become what for the minority party in parliament. And apparently they had sent the name of Mr. Kingsley Chinda from Rivers State, and Bajabi Amila, in his own thinking or whatever game he's up to playing, chose Elumelu, still from the South-South zone. So I think it's more of an affront, but if it's meant to pay PDP back for what happened during the Saraki Senate presidency, I think it's taking things a bit too far, and we should all be wary. You know, what goes around naturally comes around. And they shouldn't forget Saraki's issue was an internal party disagreement. He was an APC man, prim and proper at that time. Well, perhaps they had one or two grounds against him that he worked in cahoots with the opposition to defy the party. So I think this is a bit unparliamentary by my own thinking, but let's see how things play out.
Let's see how things go, and we would like to see our National Assembly get its act in order. Now, the United Nations also wants killing of Nigerians in Libya, also probed. President Muhammadu Buhari has also condemned on Tuesday's airstrike, and it's sad that Libya has been a hotbed and Nigerians have been caught in the mix of all of these happenings that have just left a sour linger in our throats. What do you expect?
Well, what I expect would be for government to become more proactive and focus on building the nation, focus on uniting the nation, focus on ensuring every Nigerian has a sense of belonging. And then, of course, with that, we hope the economy will, gain traction. For as long as the nation continues to stutter, immigration would continuously be an
less
issue.
Than 44 people had died, and it's just sad, and more than 130 others also wounded. We've also had the voluntary return scheme as well, but it's just still a case
where... You see, the voluntary return scheme, laudable initiative, I would say, but you see, some of those people would ask themselves, what are we returning to? Some of them would prefer Libya being a transit country to getting into Europe, to stick it out there and see if they make it into Europe. They have hopes, okay, they could be able to get jobs as, if not bartenders or menial jobs, and earn some euros. Check it out, how much is €1 to the naira?
So at the end of the day, we have to pay closer attention to what is happening back home, because beyond just that attempt to cross over, there's a whole lot more. Nigeria is really tough.
Yesterday, I read a report. The Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund also, hit over $1 trillion, and that translated to about $160,000 for each Norwegian citizen. Now, as luxurious, as wealthy as that nation is, with the high GDP, you would not see a nation with even a GDP of $20,000 per person leaving his country to go to Norway. It's not possible. You may have 1 out of every 1 million doing that from countries with such robust, healthy GDP ratios. But when you come to a country as ours with such a low GDP ratio, with economic issues here and there, come on, anybody who sees an opportunity to run or sees something better, they will most likely take it. And
people looking for something better, we look at reports as well from Igondo Estate Phase 3 Community Development Area of Lagos State, where they're calling on the federal government as well to come to their aid, because flooding has virtually left them homeless, and that was how whether the mainland or the island, it's just a pool of unnecessary water not channeled properly. And this boils down to town planning systems. Why don't we have drainages? That has been the biggest question so far. Some have said by 2050, even going back to either the mainland or the island, but focusing on the island, for example, now by 2050, it's likely that we would have Lagos Island submerged. You look at areas within the mainland, which should ordinarily have also seen better structures put in place. We are not having that there. People are swimming in water. You look at in filth.
Well,
our drainages are choked up.
I think there's also indiscipline on the part of the populace, how waste is managed.
That's one aspect, but do we even have enough drainages as well, well channeled?
Well, I think if we are disciplined enough, or people are disciplined enough and manage waste properly, and government are responsive enough to provide adequate waste evacuation points and actually evacuate those wastes, I think that's a starting point.
And those building along waterways as well, what do you say to that?
Yes, because for each time we have the roads covered in fields and it rains, where does it go to? It checks into the closest drainage.
Such a sad situation, and hopefully Nigeria gets things right. We wouldn't want to find ourselves having to flee our homes, isn't it? Well, now moving on to Vanguard newspaper. Why we suspending Ruga implementation, federal government tells details of that in page 5. And we have multiple riders. Oshibajo meets governor suspension, victory for all Nigerians. That's according to Otom, and Adamawa youths give President Buhari southern leaders 30 days ultimatum on implementation. Ultimatum insulting, provocative, Afenifere says there. And Pandef to President Buhari, beware of Adamawa youth if you are not part of the plot. And the pictorial here, we have House officials protect the maize during a rowdy session at the House of Representatives chamber over the minority leadership position in Abuja just yesterday. It was quite a situation over there. And when death lurks in Nigeria's airspace, page 30 to 31 has details there. That's the spotlight on aviation matters. And on the Naira watch, Naira depreciates to 360 Naira 61 kobo to the dollar in the importer-exporter window. That's talking business on page 41. And pandemonium as armed herdsmen invade Imo village, page 15, has details. And assault. Senate IGP begin probe as Senator Abbo whips apologizes to Nigerians. My best, not good enough. That's according to President Buhari in page 9. And COSA, Christian Association of Nigeria, calls for thorough investigations, page 14. And Taraba Assembly approves death penalty for kidnappers, page 35. And going on to the top of the newspaper, representatives in free for all over minority principal officers' position and how corruption worsens Oshodi Apapa Road gridlock. We have details of that in page 43, and how Obasanjo others conceived ING. Page 10 has details there. And also talking about oil prices and oil production, oil marketers received $3.6 billion from Central Bank of Nigeria for fuel importation. That's according to the NNPC. Okay, so going back to the Ruga implementation now, Adamawa youth gave President Muhammadu Buhari and southern leaders as well 30-day ultimatum for the implementation. That's on the sidelines of the suspension, and we also have Afenifere also saying that the ultimatum is insulting and quite provocative. What does all of this mean, really?
Well, basically what I see here is the fault lines that have always been the problem of this country are beginning to show up. Like when we were having the chit-chat before we went on air, I told you for as long as those fault lines don't show up, we are good. But once those fault lines show up, things begin to go wrong. So the issue is if our leaders would rise above sentiments, nepotism, tribalism, and all the likes that go with it. But if they don't rise above it, like I told you, people are still very suspicious about the suspension of the Ruga policy.
And a warning from Pandef to President Muhammadu Buhari, they say, well, beware of the Adamawa youths,
if he's not
part of the plot.
So everyone is basically making their position known. And I had you read about armed herdsmen invading Imo village. So since when did herdsmen begin to carry arms? So that's the part where we need to focus on, even while an appropriate policy is being worked out. We need to focus on justice. If people have rustled cows in the south, they should be found out. And it's pretty very easy. Southerners are not particularly good at the cow business. And if you've had herdsmen that have destroyed people's farms, it should be looked into. And
going beyond just destroying farms, killing people, and killing people, then they should be
brought to book. Those people are not faceless.
Okay, and Taraba State has also, House of Assembly has also amended the State Kidnapping and Abduction Prohibition Law 2010 with a new section prescribing death penalty to persons found guilty of kidnapping. Kidnapping. That's quite a side there.
It started here in the south, and it seems it's going up north. It's all part of the dire economic straits people find themselves in. Because if people were busy, if there were social justice, I don't think kidnapping will be going on.
Well, do you think this is a step in the right direction, death penalty for kidnappers?
I would say it is a step in the right direction because you need some form of legislation and very robust implementation to deter people. If there's no sufficient deterrence, people will continue to do it and get away with it.
But some also say that this is a double-edged sword as well, because there might be certain instances where people are wrongfully charged and some innocent individuals who are roped into all of these schemes might also lose their lives.
That is correct, but we would hope that the course of justice would be fair and proper.
Okay. And talking about the intervention of the Central Bank of Nigeria, providing all marketers 3.6 billion naira for fuel importation, that's according to reports from NNPC. What also do you make of this?
Well, the issue of prior to this government coming on board after the 2015 general elections, there was much hullabaloo about what the previous government had done with fuel importation and all whatnot, but we don't seem to have gotten it right. This government has even made it more, so much more has gone bad from where it used to be. So the truth of the matter remains that it's still opaque how our refined products system is being managed, both the imports, the utilization, the actual consumption, day-to-day basis. What I see government trying to do now is to ensure there's no scarcity, because scarcity could exacerbate the,
harsh realities,
and the raw deal people are getting everywhere, and they don't know what could come out of it. So these, urgent moves technically have been made to try to keep some semblance of sanity.
Okay. And now going over now to the Nation newspaper, we see the pictorial here again, wraps in a rowdy session yesterday. In a row of a minority principal officers, page 7 has details in the Nation newspaper, and some House officials were also seen protecting the maize and why President Buhari suspended cattle settlement project. Fasomi, Otom Adebanjo, others hail the action. And reasons for the president's action, senior officials in the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development and others twisted the National Livestock Transformation Program to achieve a different aim. The Ruga project was not integrated with the NLTP, agreed upon by the 36 state governors. The vice president chaired the National Economic Council, and contract sums for various aspects of the Ruga project were heavily inflated. Solar panels were put at tens of millions of naira each, and boreholes at 20 million naira each. And 5 trillion naira debt, ICPC, AMCON join forces. And assault, Senator begs women, Nigerians as well. And court restraints pleas on Edo Assembly, page 44 has details. All marketers received 3.6 billion naira from the Central Bank of Nigeria. Kwara assets management untidy. And tribunal rejects PDP Atiku's request on page 41, and EFCC arrests 3 internet fraudsters. And the court, let's start with the court also restraining the pleas on Edo Assembly. What do you also make of this?
Well, the issue happening in Edo State, I think, is basically, from what I've gleaned from the news, would have to be more like a face-off between the incumbent governor and the erstwhile governor, who is currently the APC chairman. But it seems to me the incumbent governor has been able to get some hold over the state assembly. Don't forget he's due for elections pretty soon. And the way politics is played in Nigeria, if he doesn't get a hold over the assembly, anything could happen. But then I'm hoping we grow above this pettiness.
The whole back and forth is really unnecessary.
It's really unnecessary. I mean, if you've served for 8 years, give the other person a chance. Even if you managed to recommend him and the people found him fit, if truly the people found him fit and elected him, give him some breather.
And that also
allow him and step back. I mean, the issue is that people who have held power want to continue to hold power forever.
Okay. Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you, and quite an interesting chat all the way, talking about all of the newspaper headlines so far this morning from The Punch, The Nation, Vanguard, as well as This Day newspaper. Charles, thank you very much for coming through.
My pleasure, David.
Well, we'll take a quick break now. When we come back, the discussion continues, but this time around we'll be looking at all of the sports news headlines. Don't go anywhere. It's still breakfast time. Glad to have you back. It's now time to talk some sports news updates from the national dailies as we focus on reports from the Complete Sports newspaper. And we start with one of the biggest headlines. United offer De Gea £91 million to stay. Goalie set to sign huge £350k a week 5-year deal. And also moving on, Real planning late Griezmann move. And Lampard to become Chelsea boss today. Pogba keen on Real Madrid as Spanish giants line up £120 million transfer. And Juventus to use Dybala in Pogba bid, and Atletico complete £120 move for Joao Felix, and City activate Rodri's £63 million release clause. And Ghana Raw confident Eagles will beat Cameroon, unveils training program for indomitable Lions game. And Raw, Nigerians will see better Eagles. And Adepoju, Nigeria against Cameroon is always a war. And Shehu Abdullahi says, I won't rush my return. Injured, confident Eagles will win AFCON title. And Igalo blasts and says Eagles will play Cameroon with red eyes. Instead of, Cameroon will find scoring touch versus Nigeria. Adamawa Amosu reporting live from Egypt as well. And then that's all we can take for now on this edition of the Sporting Front from the Complete Sports newspaper. Many thanks for watching. It's been a pleasure with having you join us on the Off the Press show. Make sure you have a date with us, same time, same place, right here tomorrow. It's still breakfast time on Plus TV Africa.